Okay, here we are shooting another little episode of Baja's on a Budget. One of the things I've been reading on the forums a lot lately is about guys having carburetor problems and rebuilds and so forth. They've been talking about. One of the things I wanted to point out to you guys is basically the ventilation system and what happens to the carburetors, because it's happened several times to me. And then one of the days when Mr. Fix-It and myself were at the track, it happened again. If you notice on the gas cap, you got a vent hole, and inside the vent hole you got your little support piece inside the rubber, and inside the rubber is your one-way valve, so that air is allowed in as the fuel is used, but it's not let out, so that when the Baja rolls over, the fuel will stay in the tank. If this vent hole on the cap gets clogged and you're in the process of running, especially high speeds, what happens is you create a vacuum inside the tank, and what happens is it'll stretch out the diaphragm in the carburetor, and once that happens, it's hard for the Baja to hold the tune. So what I was going to show you today is a little something that I've noticed is running the Bajas. Dust gets in the diaphragm. There's a little vent hole right here in the top of the carburetor, and underneath this vent hole is basically so when the diaphragm's going up and down pumping the fuel into your carburetor, it actually sucks in a little bit of dust in through this hole right here. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take apart a carburetor that I've ran in dusty conditions, and then I have a carburetor here that's fairly new. So I'm going to show you the difference in both the carbs. It's real easy. There's 4 screws on the top, and you just back these out, and you will have exposed the diaphragm. Now I talked to Sean over at O'Neill Brothers about kits and stuff, and called him up and asked him about rebuild kits and prices and stuff. There's a couple different sponsors on the forum that do sell the carb rebuild kits. They're around 10 bucks. I was also informed that there's a kit that has gaskets and diaphragms, and there's also a kit that has gaskets, diaphragms, needles, and everything else that you need to do to rebuild it. Okay, so I popped off the top the pump valve and the plastic cap that goes underneath it, and as you can see on this carburetor, there's dirt inside on top of the diaphragm. This is the top of the diaphragm, so this is like kind of like a breather valve on your valve cover on your car. So that dust on there is no good. You're going to need to get that out of there. Now notice on this diaphragm that's on top of this carburetor, you have your little disc in here. You see that on the inside? That's what actually pushes on your needle and seat inside the carburetor. So that little diaphragm sits on there. I can already tell you that this one does not look good, because I can see wrinkles in it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but if we get a little close up there, cameraman guy, Mr. Fix-It Studios, we'll go ahead and check that out. Now I'm going to open up this other one. This other carburetor probably has a couple runs on it, couple test runs. So we're going to pull this one off, and I'm sure that we're going to see a big difference here, because before we started rolling tape I checked it out. Don't think I didn't. So I'm going to pull the 4 screws out of here. And when you tighten these screws back down, make sure you just snug them up all the way around before you tighten them, and tighten them all even with like a crisscross pattern. Don't go cranking down on one side. You'll mess the plastic up. Okay, so on the top of this diaphragm, if you can get a close-up on it, you can see that this one has a nice pressed ring all the way around it, and it's not all wrinkled up. If that diaphragm is stretched out, you're going to get inconsistent running. You're not going to be pumping all the fuel that you need to, because the diaphragm's all stretched out. So when it's pumping in there, you're just kind of flapping a baggy bag around. You know, you're not really getting the fuel that you need. Because I've noticed once that hole plugs, I've come down the straightaway, and then the next lap my Baja kind of starts running funky, and it's the diaphragm on there. So this one's a new diaphragm right here. I'm going to peel this one off and see if we can get a close-up on those. And you're going to see the difference in the two diaphragms. One's going to be baggy and one has wrinkles. You can see the wrinkles. There's no actual line around the magnetic. There's no actual line around the bottom of this diaphragm, and this diaphragm has a nice concave circle all the way around it. So remember, when you're running your Bajas, keep your vent cap hole clean and keep it from debris. And then after time, as you've done a couple runs, go ahead and pull your cap, take the dust out. And if your diaphragm looks a little stretched out and baggy in areas where it's not holding its shape, it's not holding a nice concave ring all the way around, then you're going to want to pick up one of the rebuild kits and go ahead and rebuild your carburetor. Like I said, they're about 10 bucks for the full rebuild kit, and I'm not really sure about just the gasket kit, but I'm sure it's right around that price too. But anyways, there's another little deal on how to maintenance your Baja and keep the cost down. So this is Shread signing out. We'll see you at the races.